Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Music Man podcast. We welcome you. We want you to subscribe to our channel. We want you to watch this and consume. And we want you to also comment below if you have
Yes.
questions or you want to criticize us or you just want to engage in conversation. I am Joe,
And this is Ken.
and we are your hosts for this podcast.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. Hello to everyone.
Yep, true.
What's on the plate, Joey? What's on the plate for today?
So you and I talked about this a little bit. How do people discover new music now?
Okay.
And I'm going to give a real quick, brief history to how people used to find stuff. And then we're going to go into further detail on how they get it now.
All right.
Let me get my
I'm
notes
in.
pulled up.
I'm listening. I'm just going to drink my water here.
Yeah, no, you're good. I've got to pull my notes up. Okay, so prior to social media or musical artists and bands primarily relied on traditional methods of channels to get discovered. And those were basically record labels, so securing a record label, which would promote and push and everything. Live performances, which were crucial and critical for that time frame. We had word of mouth and networking, not just of your own word of mouth, but people that enjoyed your music and would talk about your music and stuff, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then we also had radio airplay. So if you were kind of a bigger band, or when radio stations, which we talked about a little bit, were more independent, they would play smaller artists, you could get local airplay on radio, which would help you gain more fans in your local area.
Okay.
And then this was another one that you and I kind of grew up with, was print media and magazines.
Yeah.
We had a lot of local music magazines we still have them, especially here. I think in Chicago too, where you are, like Chicago Reader and stuff. Those were really critical. I remember when you and I were playing a lot, we'd pick those up all the time and look at they'd show you up and coming sections and stuff. And it was actually pretty cool to read about it.
Absolutely.
And we discover new music that way. And then there were music competitions, which I think were a big joke, but where you would do Battle of the Band stuff, and it was fine. But you could gain fans from that, as a local artist, if you were playing in a local band of bands, especially in a high school or college environment. And then in general, when you're just walking around the other way, we kind of did it with my old band Nimba, was we would walk around and just pass out demo tapes and stuff and try to sell CDs at local festivals. It was very annoying.
Oh God, the street teams.
Yeah, but we sold 50 CDs in one festival just walking around after we performed, and we sold 50 CDs. Jason can vouch for that one. It was insane. We sold 50 CDs doing that, and it wasn't a huge festival. It was just Oak Park Festival.
Okay.
But we brought a little CD player and we put on our CD thing, and we got 50 people to buy our CD from that, which was cool. So again, one of those ways that people gain fans before social media.
Okay.
So at this point, do you have any questions yet to ask in pertaining, or do you want me to just keep going? Because I don't want to
No, you keep going.
Everything.
You keep going. Yeah, this sounds juicy.
Okay. So I'm going to get to right away the data and the statistics of this. And I found 3 sources of information, and 3 of them were from different dates in terms of years, all current, 2021, I think 2022 and 2023. So they're all within this time frame.
Okay.
Also, two of them are going to be kind of geared towards America in general. And then I got one that's like global scale of like how people consume music or find and discover new music.
Okay.
If I seem overzealous, it's just because this kind of surprised me a little bit. And I think it might surprise you a little bit too, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just overthinking that it's.
I don't know. We hit me with it.
Well, what is the way you think most people consume music or discover new music right now?
Right now, oh geez, Louise, I would have to imagine social media is probably one of the bigger ways to learn about new musicians, new acts, new anything. I know that's one of the places. Well, that's one of the major places that I have come across a number of artists. So I would say social media.
Okay.
Final answer.
That's actually not it.
Oh.
But go ahead. You could take another guess if you want.
Okay. I can't be radio anymore. Is it radio?
So, radio
Come on.
and music apps are tied at 35% where people find new music.
Wow.
So that includes satellite radio too.
Okay. So all right. Okay.
And like I'm still, my one car still has terrestrial radio. I mean, both my cars do, but my girlfriend still uses satellite radio in the new car. I use standard radio. It drives her crazy because of commercials, but I still listen to regular radio when I'm driving to work and stuff. Like it's how I consume music when I'm driving in the car or a CD. But I found that fascinating that simple radio still and satellite radio combined make 35%, and then music streaming apps make 35% as well.
Oh man, I never would have, and I never would have thought that, primarily because back in the day there was no satellite. Well, back in, at least when I was a teenager, there was no satellite radio that had 200 plus channels that gave opportunities to hundreds and hundreds of, like, there's a lot more outlets when there are 200 radio stations, as opposed to in your city, there's maybe 20. You know what I mean? And not all the radio stations actually play music, so to speak. So my mindset, why I'm surprised by that number, is when I was a teenager growing up, the radio was maybe 5 channels that were worth even listening to, and those were the ones that gave you what was new, or at least what the record companies were handing out that month or that week or that year. So that being said, I've given up on actual, like, old school radio as anything that provides something new.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if anybody's ever spent the day listening to one radio station, like a whole work day, and all of a sudden, like halfway through the day or 2/3 through the day, you're hearing the song that you heard first thing in the morning, because they're just recycling just a catalog of songs, and that's just what the radio plays. So to think that radio still is giving that kind of opportunity to new musicians and new artists I would not have expected that.
Yeah, it's surprising. Well, and to piggyback off the satellite radio thing, like, they do have tons of channels, but most of the channels are directed towards artists in terms of like a single artist. Like, there's Tom Petty's channel, there's Elvis's channel, there's Pearl Jam's got its own channel. Like, so it's weird to me because satellite radio has, like, they have like Octane and Alt Nation, top 80s hits, top 90s hits, but it's not like you go to like, hey, I want to listen to like indie music, and it just automatically starts playing it. And it got me curious to how you can even be on satellite radio. And there is a submission for that, which is a whole nother podcast episode I think we should touch on, is like, how do you get on satellite radio type thing?
Oh, yeah.
But it fascinates me that that's an outlet that like you said, like even terrestrial radio, like unless it's an indie channel, like
Yeah.
you really got to break into a big market to like, you know. Um, so going back to the stats here, so this is what's crazy to me. Social media still isn't even third.
Oh wow.
So movies and TV shows are next. How people
What?
find music. Yeah, that's at 33% of people find new music, discover new music through TV shows and movies. Which is why I keep
Wow.
telling you we need to submit to some of these things.
We do. We got to start making Mentadent jingles
Yeah,
and
that's dead. So the next one, which this goes back to um like you and I doing like contract work and stuff. Word of mouth, friends and family. That's 31%. People
really?
consume new music. 31% of them get new music from family and friends recommendations.
Okay.
Which to me makes sense because that's kind of like the similar thing it was in the originally, like the networking and like word of mouth.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so and then social media is next at 30%.
Okay, so before you go any further, give me the percentages in order of what you've mentioned so far.
So 35% each for music apps, and that includes all of them: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and radio and satellite radio are both at 35%. So those
Okay.
those three are 35%. Movies and TV shows are 33%. Uh, recommendations from friends and family are 31%. Social
All right.
media is 30%. And then this is where commercials are 15%.
Okay.
Video games are 10%. And then website blogs, reviews are 10%. Podcasts are 9%. And then it says other are 7%.
Okay.
And then 19% say I don't seek out new music. Which
Oh,
I'm
okay,
like, okay,
fine.
well, whatever.
Be that as it may.
So
So I
go
so I'm
ahead.
here. I was just gonna say, so like I'm hearing the major sources are kind of even,
Yeah.
a little, sort of even, like 5% or less difference. So they're all kind of they almost sound like they're all important.
They are. And just so that people who are listening understand the context of this, this is just from the 2021 study. And what it says here is uh, this was surveyed discovering new music. U.S. adults are most likely to turn to radio and music apps such as Spotify, Pandora, and Apple Music. This is per a survey of almost 8,000 U.S. adults. And this is from YouGov. They were the company that did this analysis for this whatever you want to call it
Got
survey.
it. Got it.
So let me go to the next one, and this one is from 2023 August, and this is geared towards age wise now. So that one didn't really break up too much with like age, which is probably why we had like still
So
older radio, because
sure.
that generation might be only listening to terrestrial radio or satellite radio or whatever.
Yeah.
And cut me off if I'm talking too much. I was kind
No,
of
no.
crazed by like how this. I was surprised by this when I found all this stuff out.
It's definitely it definitely is surprising to hear that radio still seems to be relevant in terms of exposing people to new music. I don't necessarily, with the, let's say, with the advent of streaming services and the way that us musicians can send out music into the world, the concept that sort of swirls in my head is like, Well, you don't need a record company to do that. And who has connections to the radio stations? Well, the record companies, right?
Yes.
So is there credibility in what the record company is pushing on the radio? Well, probably. They're still mining or sourcing out acts and musicians that are all, many of them are incredibly talented.
Yeah.
But I, I don't know. It's still, I thought radio was dead. I really did. I thought it was just like you listen to radio for anything you wanted to hear, you know, 2010s and earlier.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because Leah said the same thing. Leah gets annoyed, like not annoyed. I don't mean it like that, but she laughs at me because I still listen to radio. But for me, it's like I don't mind finding like new pop music or whatever. Like there's a rock channel out here that I listen to that like they'll play local music certain times of night where it's like okay, I'll listen to local music, see what's out there. And I actually found some artists that I've gravitated to through spot like to listen to on Spotify from that local playing stuff. Like I've
Wow.
it's and then there's another Americana country local independent station out here that plays a lot of local stuff around here. And it's
Okay.
crazy how these bands kind of blow up from coming up into this radio station. But
Interesting.
anyway, I do think it's funny that that's a way people find music still.
Yeah. I guess maybe it's just the nature of the beast now is that it's a hybrid experience where the radio isn't necessarily the only place where, like, let's say, you know, prior to the 90s, you know, before, you know, computer access and stuff was around, like you heard of you either listened to the radio and that's how you experienced new musicians, or you just went to a show and the opening act, say, was the new musician to you that you had never heard before.
Yeah.
Like, I remember there being lots of limited places that you could actually go, aside from just going directly to the record store and sifting through records in their
Yeah.
categories. You know, like we have a place here in Chicago called Rolling Stones Records, and I remember as a teenager that was other than hearing it on the radio, you go to the record store and you thumb through, say, you know, classic rock section or, you know, rock section, or they even had a back wall. Do you remember this? They had a back wall in the store that had all of the new releases, all
And you
like,
could listen to them.
right.
Yeah.
So how is it now? Okay, radio is still the thing, you know, still using. Oh, it's still useful, and it's still, I guess, putting people in touch with a lot of new music. But what if you just listening to, say, like, I know if you don't have satellite radio, like, are they still? Do they still do that? Is there new music Tuesday, or do you know what I mean? Like,
That's a great question.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure.
yeah,
I miss those days though of going into a record store and being able to put on like headphones and like hearing a whole like you could literally play a CD player. They had the CD set up on a tray and you would
yeah,
put the
yeah,
headphones
yeah,
in
yeah.
and you would be able to listen to it. I remember you'd skip through tracks and like and then you put them down after like 2 minutes and the next person would come up and just listen to see if they wanted to like buy the album, but it was only
Yeah.
for specific new albums that they did that for.
Right.
Like you couldn't open a CD case and just put anything in there to listen to it or whatever.
Right. I guess in hindsight, the only thing that was bad about that experience was the shared headphones.
Yeah, that was gross. Although they weren't the earbuds, they were just the
yeah,
the regular, but
old
still.
school, over the ears ones with like you. Sometimes there'd be someone's sweaty leather, like the sweat
Yeah.
still on the leatherette.
So you'd be like holding them like this, where you're just like,
Yeah,
I'm listening.
away from your
but-
head, so Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
that was gross.
no, it's okay because we both were going there either way. Uh, so the next one I want to talk about real quick, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask you later on after we get done with this, how you find new music, so people can hear how each of us find new music when we're trying to discover new music, because I think that's important too.
Okay.
But let me get through these real quick, and then I think a little more will be surprising to you as we get through this stuff.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, so this was from 2023, and this is for Gen Z and millennials, which you and I both fit into as elder millennials. We're elder. Um,
Yeah. I'm not going
we're,
to argue with that.
we're old. Um, this is both men and women, um, and they have different methods of how they discover songs and artists.
Okay.
So the biggest takeaway from this is social media is predominantly how they find their music. So Gen Z and millennials find out about new music and artists or songs via social media. The most with women, like that's how women mostly find new music in that age. I should say, but that's
Wow.
predominantly how Gen Z millennial women find new music is social media
Okay.
more than men. Young women are more likely to discover new music from their friends too. So their
Okay.
friends will be like, "Hey, check out this artist," which I'm surprised because you and I and a couple of my other friends will be like, "Hey, have you heard this?" And we'll text each other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, this is kind of surprising for me, maybe because I don't play video games, but young men are far more likely to discover new music from video games,
Oh wow.
which
I could see that.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't play them, so I don't really know, but I
I
guess it
you know
makes sense.
I have several friends that play a lot of video games, and I mean I played video games when I was a teenager and a kid as well, and there are the soundtracks have changed. It's I guess you would call it you know product placement.
Yeah.
Putting someone's song into the video game. So that makes sense to me. I can see that.
So this is the rundown of like the biggest to the lowest of how people find in our generation and the younger generation find new music. So social media, YouTube videos, then friends, then suggestions from a streaming platform, then family because parents don't know anything, then radio again, which is crazy because then it's after radio is TV shows,
Okay.
then it's video games. So that's where like the men and the women, like if you look at the chart, it's like men's huge and women's is like short compared to the.
Wow.
And then it's movie soundtracks,
Okay.
advertisements, and the last one is at a concert. So like if an opening band
Wow.
comes with a like a headlining artist. So
Like that's crazy because I remember that was one of the probably top three or four places you saw or were exposed to new music was the
yeah,
opening
right.
act. That's what I was talking about. Like, holy cow.
Well, even festivals, like we would go to festivals and they still have them, but like they'd have the
Yeah.
like Family Values tour. They would have the major headlining artists, but then they'd have like five kind of like
Yeah.
names you weren't familiar with, and you would fall in love with like a band that was like an opening band. You're like, this is great, holy cow.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, but it's crazy that it's so low, but
Yeah.
um. And then the last one is this is from 2022, and this is how global consumers find new music. And they do have it broken down in age demographic, which gets a little bit tricky.
Okay.
Hang on a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That's it still is very surprising the channels that are that I guess I shouldn't say it's surprising. It's just the way the nature of the beast has gone. You know, technology has totally blown the doors off of how music can be distributed. It's incredible how little control the main avenues of, you know, distribution at the time, they just don't have as much control anymore.
Correct.
So,
So for consumers on a global scale, it's predominantly music apps,
okay.
and that is heavily by 18 to 24-year-olds. And as you go, it starts to decline down. So like, even for our generation, we're only we're at 39% of our generation that finds music, which is actually is the highest amount for, but like it's still for 57% compared to 57% for the 18 to 24-year-olds
Yeah.
compared to us who are 35 to 44-year-olds that are 39%. That's kind of a significant like difference, you know,
Oh,
in
big time. Yeah.
percentage. 25 to 34-year-olds is 10% less than that. They're 47% to find it through music apps. So they're just shy of half.
Hmm.
And then the older generations, that just keeps declining down. They're actually the ones, the boomer generation, they're the ones that are majorly into the radio and satellite radio. So, not to be dark or
Ah.
anything, but as that generation slowly passes away, I wonder if that's going to eventually change and transition.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, especially with satellite radio subscription.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest. I I do not turn on the free over the air radio in my vehicle. I just it's so pointless. The level of garbage, at least with it's it's two songs and then nine
Yeah.
minutes of commercials. And then two songs and then another 9 minute of commercials. And it's kind of like, well, I'm just sitting here listening to commercials because this isn't a subscription radio. So I can only imagine if the older generations, or I'll call them vintage, the
The
vintage
vintage,
generation.
the antiques.
Sure, if they are the ones propping up like free radio as well as I totally could see a steep drop in draw to that kind of thing because I mean social media is it's in a way it is a godsend for the creative type because of how much access you as the creative have to your listeners or viewers. So I can totally see that radio is like meh. Eh,
Well, and social media from 18-year-olds to 44-year-olds, social media was second in terms
yeah.
of getting discovering new music globally. So from 45-year-olds to 55-year-olds, social media wasn't the prominent one. It was still it was radio, but then after that came music apps.
Okay.
So social media was still like third on the totem pole. Not even third for boomer generation, but for Gen X it was.
Okay. All right.
Um, and then after that it was family and friend recommendations,
Okay.
and then movies and TV shows. And
Interesting.
and websites and blogs were pretty low. They were not that big in terms of like what you think. And this all goes into like how do you promote yourself in a way? Like
Yeah.
doing those music blogs and reviews. They're not bad or anything, but a lot of people don't discover it through there. So it might be one of those where how do you want to spend your marketing money, you know, as a band?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
This is
anyway,
that. Go ahead. No, go.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that this is. I think this is an important point to to accent for any listeners out there that are creative types. This is some pretty valuable information to know in regards to how you're going to market yourself or market your whatever it is that you're doing. It's kind of eye opening and
Yes.
nice to hear this. Like, ooh, juicy.
You know, and the reason I thought of this question to begin with was like, as I'm doing marketing for my own music, or we're doing marketing for our music, it's one of those things where it's like, you obviously have to do some of it, but like, what platform is worth going to, or what marketing strategy works best for demographic, not only demographic, but for music too. Like,
Sure.
rock music's totally different than Americana music. So where are those people? I think that would be great too, is to get statistics about those specific genres of how people find music in those genres, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be nice.
so that might be another podcast episode. If I can find the data for that, I will absolutely want to share that with people, because I think it's valid to like provide for other artists to understand. Don't waste your
Yeah.
marketing money on invalid marketing tactics.
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, with anything you do in your endeavors, figuring out where to not waste your time is very, very, very important.
Yeah. So one more thing I want to touch on, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you how you discover new music, and then I'll answer my way. If you can answer this question for me. So this just changed in 2020, but what social media platform, I guess I could call it that, um, is the one place where like most people find new music?
Oh, if I swear to God, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna go jump into the river. But it's got to be TikTok.
Correct. So
Okay.
officially it was YouTube up until 2020, and then TikTok surpassed YouTube.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my God. I have heard all over the place that TikTok has single-handedly changed the way a lot of music is written because it needs to fit, or the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes of your song's got to fit within the what is it, the 15 seconds or however long you have to do a tick. I'm not a ticky
60 seconds.
tacker. I'm not.
They've extended the video length, but originally I think it was 60 seconds.
Okay, yeah,
It might have
like
been shorter than that. I don't remember, but
uh,
I hate TikTok though.
I'm not. Everybody tells me, dude, you gotta do it, dude. You got.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's another thing that my small brain has to manage, and there's just so much. There's so much. I I the self-imposed ADHD that consumes me is bad enough with some of the social media that I'm on.
Yeah.
I can't add another like drug to the mix of the other drugs that I'm taking. Like, no, I can't. That's no, no. But I'm not surprised at all that TikTok is the lead. It's in the top spot.
Yeah. And as someone who posts to TikTok, when I do my downside up stuff,
Yeah,
it's fine, but I only do it sparingly, because it's just like you said, it's annoying,
yeah,
and it doesn't, for me. I don't know. I know it's a generational thing, but it's hard. It's like, I don't want to post to another stupid social media platform. It's already enough
yeah,
to doing hashtags and all this stuff, but like you said, you kind of have to, because it's the nature of the beast to find more listeners. But
yeah. And I mean, if we want to think progressively, it is another tool,
yeah,
and it's another tool that helps get your art and your music and everything you're doing. It helps get it out. It helps reach people because I mean, any marketer or any marketing company would tell you, well, we need to serve it to where the people are. And right now, there's a lot of people that use TikTok. Like
yeah.
it's the thing. It's the thing, man.
It is.
So it is a good tool because like what is it that the cross pollinating or cross marketing or
Yeah.
whatever this, you know what I mean, like you got to be on everything, or you got to try and cover all your bases to reach as many people as you can, and blah 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 blah. So it could be a useful tool to those of you out there. So I can't knock it too much.
Yeah. How do you discover new music?
Oh geez, for me right now it's social media. I have found that Instagram is a wonderful playground for people to share their art, their brilliance, their ideas, and their music. It's tough when the algorithm sort of, you know, puts you in a one track and feeds you only certain things, only this and only that. And it's you kind of have to, like, you can use the search system to look up specific kinds of music to see if there's anything that suits your fancy. But for me, it's been Instagram. I've come across a number of artists that I absolutely enjoy that I never would have. I mean, especially with what the pandemic did for the music industry, there was no way to experience anybody new via a live performance, obviously. So a lot of that exploration and finding new music happened when we were all keeping our snots to ourselves.
Yeah.
So Instagram. Beyond that, sometimes YouTube actually will suggest people's videos or people's performances that are, similar, or I don't know. Sometimes it feels like the YouTube algorithm is actually throwing a curveball, because it'll throw something up there. We're like, oh, well, that's interesting. I can't really figure out what I was looking at that led them to believe I'd like this. But even through YouTube, there are, like I said, musical performances that will pop up that never would have thought to look for.
Yeah.
One of the bands that struck me when we were locked down, because it was recommended on YouTube, was a band called Blackberry Smoke, and they had one of their live outdoor performances, free of charge, and it was nice. Like you got to see a little bit of who they were. It was almost like getting to see a whole performance for free. But anyways, Instagram and social media is where I get a lot of it these days.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be standard across the board for most of us, um, especially because a lot of people in our generation, not that they don't go out, but we don't really go to live concerts as much, especially local ones anymore, which is kind of a shame because that is where you can discover some really cool music.
Yeah.
But for me, it's similar to you. I get a little bit from Instagram, depending on my feed, but I'm like you. I try to stay off as much as possible, just because you can get down the rabbit holes of shit. And
Yeah.
YouTube is prominent in my music discovery, which is why I will always vouch, even if it's a lyric video, posting a video of some type to go with your song, especially if you have an artist account, is crucial, because I find so many artists that I've now that are just independent artists via YouTube, whether it's a reaction video of like, this song is crazy, and then I'll click on the stupid thing because it's a clickbait thing, but it winds up taking me to a song where I'm like, this is a fucking good song.
Yeah.
And then it's also just sends me music videos of random bands that I'm like, all right, it looks cool, I'll check it out. And I have followed and added to my playlist multiple independent bands that have like 15,000 listeners or 10,000 listeners. And I'm like, this shit's good. Why is nobody listening to this?
Wow.
The other way is Spotify playlists. I'll just put on a random playlist that's got like the genre that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I'll find some artist where I'm like, this is a great song, and start like it, and then I'll put it to a playlist and I start listening to it.
Yeah.
And
I should, I need to add to that. I don't use Spotify a lot, but when I do, there have been quite a number of suggested like music and songs, especially with the Downside Up music that you've been doing. I'll listen to your channel. Well, that's right. I'll listen to our channel, and because when you're not an actual subscriber, it'll give you one or two of what you actually want, and then it will suggest. You know how it is. It suggests somebody else. Well, there's been a lot of synthwave suggestions that I was like, hey, I really like what this person's doing.
yeah.
And I never would have how there's so much of that
Yeah.
kind of music that's scouring the catalogs of what you might like is so freaking difficult.
Yeah.
So I want to throw Spotify in there too. I get some from Spotify as well.
Good. Do you have anything you want to add on this, or we might want to wrap this up?
The only thing I would throw in there is if anybody's interested in sharing in the comments, where do you get your music from? Who do you what is your favorite source? I think is a better question. We'd love to hear. If not, don't worry. We'll have another podcast, and you can just sit and listen to that one too.
So the biggest takeaway from here is streaming apps for music.
Yeah.
Satellite and terrestrial radio for older generation.
Yeah.
And then music, movies, TV shows, social media, all that stuff. So it just depends on which way you want to market your music and the demographic you're looking for. And hopefully we can find in one of the next podcast episodes, break it up by genre and where the genres are. People are finding music that way. So
yeah. Very interesting stuff, Joseph.
I hope I surprised everybody, and I hope I surprised you.
I would never have thought that terrestrial radio is still relevant today.
Well, and I shouldn't claim the data. I did not take the data, but I'm glad that I could find the data and provide it for you, as a surprise.
And we thank you so much.
Oh, I know. Thank you.
You've done society a service, and we appreciate it.
Oh, it means so much to me. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. I'm Joe.
I'm Ken.
And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Don't forget to follow.
Right. Please click and subscribe and the bell and all those things. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.